Hey, welcome everybody. This is the very first episode of the Lacy Johnson Podcast, where we're going to be bringing to you some very good commentary on the issues in the news. And, you know, like I say, I'm a little biased. I think it's going to be provocative, knowledge filled. Every once in a while, it might even bring a smile to your face, a nod in agreement. And then we're going to have guests, interesting guests. Provocative guests also. That word provocative keep coming up in this. Boy, I'm setting a high bar for myself, but we think we're going to do that. And so join us this every week for the podcast. Now, today, the issues that we're going to be commenting on are the recent mass shooting in Buffalo, New York, and we'll talk about the gun control laws. We're going to talk about our harbor press, our harbor media, and how they cover things like this. We're going to talk about the theft of the Supreme Court briefing, how we've seen to lost all our moral compasses, and we do anything to achieve a goal. The ends justify the means kind of a philosophy we've taken here. And then we'll talk about the current baby food shortage, which, you know, what else is new? This economy has been ran in the ditch by the current administration. And to be honest with you, I'll be surprised if they know how to drive it out of the ditch. Liberal policies put everything and everybody in ditches. And as long as we adhere to those policies, the economy will continue to tank. And we'll continue to have, you know, $6 cartons of eggs and $5 gas. So we'll talk about all that, and hope you stay with us and give us your feedback when we're done. So let's get going. Let's just dive into it right quick. This Saturday, May 14th, a young man killed 10 people in Buffalo, and he wounded 3. From all indications, this was a terrorist race-based attack. But before we go on, I would like to sincerely express my condolences to the families of the victims, because, you know, no matter what side you're on, it ultimately comes down to the humanity of everything. So once again, I extend my condolences to the victims. Now, as far as the story itself, first of all, when stories like that come out and where it's obvious that the narrative support a particular agenda, I try to do a little research and get as much information as possible. And I've just learned now that dissecting quote unquote news stories, you almost have to be a knowledge detective. And normally that takes time. So I was very busy over the weekend. I haven't had time to dig into some of the things that was mentioned in the news article. One of the first questions I have is there any mental health issues going on here? Secondly, I was telling someone I like to know what led up to this situation. When I say what led up to the situation, I'm saying something 2 or 3 years ago about this young man that would have predicted this. And thirdly, I keep hearing about this manifesto, and I want to read that for myself because I've learned a long time ago not to depend on anyone, especially our mainstream media, to tell me what's in a document or what something said. So that's one thing. I should tell you, and along that line, when they were talking about there being weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, I never believed it. As soon as they said it, I thought it was a lie. And by that time, I think I had cracked the code when they said, started talking about Donald Trump colluding with the Russians. As you can imagine, I do have some liberal Democrat friends, and I was on the phone with two of them. And as soon as they said it, I bet them each $10,000 that it wasn't true. And there are some tricks to deciphering the media. I use the same approach to news stories as a juror should use when assessing evidence in court. And I don't trust much in hearsay. I don't trust much in people telling me what's in a document or what someone else said. And too much of our news coverage today evolves around that. And I do know that there is an agenda associated that's behind, well, I don't know whether it's behind this story, but this story helps to promote a particular agenda, a particular narrative, a set of narratives. Well, first of all, gun control. It supports those who want to impose gun control on our country. The other thing is, we're in a situation now where the mainstream media and those associated with it, they will do anything to prevent President Trump from returning to the White House. So it's consistent with that. And then, and one of the most, I try to be kind. I'm a Christian, but I can't help it sometimes. And one of the most ridiculous things I've heard come out of President Biden's mouth in his administration, all those woke people associated with it, is that white supremacists is the number one threat in the nation. I'm like, give me a break. And this as, you know, Antifa and everyone is rioting and burning down cities and attacking federal buildings and things like that. This is at a time when I've seen Black Lives Matter attack Black couples and Black women because they don't agree with them, and they're protecting them, and then they're promoting this philosophy. And look, while I'm on that, I have enough background and knowledge in human behavior to understand the bell curve or normal distribution, where on each end you might have radical people on each end. So in America, yes, you can always find stories of racism. You can always find stories of people doing racist things and highlight that. But the normal distribution, the bell curve of the normal distribution of human behavior says that there will be a few people that are doing that. There will be a few people on the other end that's just, I don't know, love blacks or whatever, for whatever reason. But most of us will be in between. And so what I see now, and this is what I try to run all news story about racism, sexism, homophobic, all those type of things through, is people purposely looking for these stories to highlight them. In a country of 330 million people, and I haven't seen the latest census data, but I know the previous census data, I think there was 160 million white Americans. You can always find a story on racism to put it on national TV. And you can always choose to ignore all the stories of us getting along. And America is a great experiment. We are an ideal in progress. And for the most part, we get along. And for the most part, we get along very well. And even in cases where we don't get along, and this is an important thing, we respect each other. And so to go and every day find a racist story and put it on mainstream media, I think there's an agenda behind that. And ignore all the millions or tens of millions of positive story of us as a people getting along. And so that's one of the reasons I'm skeptical. Now, I was telling someone, New York City has some of the most strictest gun laws in the country. And I find it rather curious that two of the recent mass shootings has occurred in New York. A few weeks ago, a gentleman shot up the New York City subway. now that's an interesting story too. And one of these days, I hope to have the media as a topic, because they're not serving this country well at all. And I know they're not. I know they are not, because once again, I don't just read the headlines. I don't just read all the articles. I go out and research what's behind the headlines, and I find out, once I started doing that, they were very, very, shall we say, disingenuous and deceitful in their reporting. And where I'm getting to in this case is that the gentleman, I don't know what's called, the man that shot up the New York City subway had posted on social media all kinds of hateful things against white people. In fact, some of his posts, he was very clear. He wanted to kill all white people. And so he's posting all this. He goes into the subway and he shoots up white people. And the amazing thing, and me and my wife sitting there the next morning, listen to the news, ABC, NBC, the typical scoundrels. When they reported the story, they did not mention his social media posts. They did not mention the fact that he hated white people, and because that's against the narrative. They did not mention any of that. In fact, there was a story where they did not even say he was black. They took the race issue totally out of the story. And I said to my wife, can you imagine if a white person with that racist hatred in their social media had killed black people? It would be the #1 news story for about 7 or 8 days. It would lead that he was a racist. His social media posts would have been put up. And this time, they just ignored it all. And now, I'm not saying that we should ever ignore what someone and their motives. We should always explore that. But I'm just saying the unevenness of it. And just like in this case, this young man appeared to be the racist that they are describing him as. But until I do a little bit more research and stuff, I'm kind of hesitant to make any final conclusions on it. But just looking at the whole issue of gun control, when I was, shall I say, a less knowledgeable person and a liberal, they had me sold on we need to take people guns away from them, restrict guns and things like that. And that was even during the time when I believe in the Bill of Rights. But they had somehow kind of convinced me that that was the answer. But once again, as I became more knowledgeable, and to be honest with you, became older and wiser, it dawned on me that I grew up in an area where everyone had guns. And in fact, I was talking to a deacon from my church back then, and he let me know that he had over 30 guns in his house. And everybody where I grew up had at least 3 guns in their house, a shotgun, a rifle, and a pistol. But we didn't kill each other, people. We just didn't kill each other. And the reason we didn't kill each other, because we had a spiritual foundation. I was raised as a Southern Baptist and brought up in the church, and we had Christianity and the teachings of Jesus as the foundation to our moral compass. And the 10 Commandments said, "Thou shalt not kill," and we tried to be faithful to that commandment. And therefore, no matter how many guns, how many people had, we didn't kill each other. We didn't lie to each other. We didn't steal, because we had that moral compass. And what's wrong today is that there's a large part of our country that has absolutely no moral conscience. From everything I see, they have very few principles. Well, they pretend they do until the principle get in the way of what they're trying to achieve. They're the same way with the Constitution. Well, in fact, one of the major things that separate conservatives from liberals is conservatives believe in the Constitution and the principle in the Constitution, and they try to live and abide by it. And they don't ignore the Constitution to get their way. Most of my liberal friends either don't know the Constitution or don't care about it. And to them, the Constitution just would represent something of convenience that if it gets in the way of what they want to do, they just ignore it or don't pay any attention to it. So that's right now we pay attention to the Constitution, and that's what I think about when I hear read about these killings. And keep going. Okay, you can edit. Okay, yeah. Okay, that's what I think about when I read about these killings and people trying to use that as an excuse to restrict our rights to own, to bear arms. And look, while I'm on that, as a conservative, sometimes I'm even disappointed in my own fellow conservative, because a lot of times they seem to give the Second Amendment more weight than other rights in the Bill of Rights. And I'm especially concerned about the presumption of innocence. In this day and age of video cameras with videos on cell phones, we'll see a video and the whole country will automatically assume that that person is guilty. And I know that sounds strange, but I think for the sake of this country, we should, no matter how hard it is, adhere to that principle, because that's what separates us from an abusive government. The Founding Fathers realized that the federal government had overwhelming resources and power, and that the average person alone, citizen alone, a small group of people could not match those resources and power. So one of the ways that they try to help balance the scales is to make sure that the government had to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. And understand it's a very fine but a key point. What that says to me is not what a person does, it's what the government can prove. And I think that's a very key foundation of our liberties and freedom here. And I forgot who it was, might have been Ben Franklin, said he'd rather 100 guilty people go free than us to wrongfully convict one innocent person. And I have that same attitude. As a matter of fact, I use the O.J. Simpson situation a lot of times to make that point. I believe O.J. did it, but I also believe the jury reached the right verdict. And the reason I say that, because I sat and watched most of it, and when you watch it, you can see that the government did not prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt, in spite of what the news media was calling overwhelming evidence. In fact, I would sit at home, watch the trial during the day because I work in second shift, and when I see the news, inevitably, I was like, that's not what I saw in the court. So those are the type of things I think we need to be thinking about to wrap up this particular item. Racism in this country does exist. I'm of the opinion that racism is like murder. It's like theft. It's like lying. It's like assaults. It's part of the human condition. And I just remember, and I try to live by that, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And so I don't think we're ever going to change, get rid of racism. But you know what? The beauty of America, and this once again is my attitude, is that the Constitution and the laws equalize everything. And what I say to my friends, and my belief is, you're free to think whatever you want. You're free to love who you want for whatever reason. We're free to hate whoever we want for whatever reason. But as long as we don't break the law, you can hate me as a person. You can hate me because of the color of my skin, or because you don't like people who talk loud or whatever. But the law says you can't discriminate against me, and that's where I draw the line. So even though there are racists out there, there'll always be racism. I think, and someone once said, it's laws It's one of the things that separate us human beings from lower animals. And I believe that. And we should never get to the place where our philosophy, our goals and things are more important than adhering to the law. It's more important than the Constitution. And once again, America is a great experiment, and I think we've done very well. I'm old enough to remember times, the civil rights movement. I know all the changes that we've gone through, and I think we are progressing very well. I think most Americans in their heart want to do right and do the good things and be good people. Unfortunately now, and I started out with the media, and I probably ended up on the media. There's a media out there that's divided, and I'm gonna be honest and say it's dishonest, and it's always constantly dividing us by not stressing truth, not stressing facts, and not really putting things in context. And their whole idea is to help formulate our opinions one way or the other and divide us. And that's where we as Americans has to do our part as citizens to protect this democracy. I'll end it with a quote from Abraham Lincoln. I'll paraphrase it. But during the Civil War, President Lincoln basically made the statement true in general. He said, "We would not be conquered by some outside armies." He said, "All the armies in the world could not cross one of the rivers here in this country." He said, "If we are going to die, it will be this country. If this country's going to die, it will be by suicide. That we're going to destroy this country ourselves." And I've gotten to an age in life where I see all the signs of it. I think we should take it serious. I think we as citizens should take it serious, but because the people with power and money, it's not their concern. It's up to us Americans with different opinions from different backgrounds to come together and start sharing and reading things. And let me suggest too, and we talked about this in an earlier session, if you hate Fox News, spend a week watching it with an open mind. If you hate CNN, spend a week watching it with an open mind. If you don't like conservative radio hosts, just listen for a while. Liberal radio hosts, just listen. And then hopefully we can start using social media for some positive things to bring us together instead of dividing us. So once again, the story about the this weekend shooting in Buffalo is sad for any of us to do anything because we hate each other. And I think we kind of underestimate human lives. I mean, we just cheapen the life of people, man. And it's not just racists and extremists. We all have. I mean, 800 people don't get shot up in Chicago in a month, or 10 get killed over a weekend because they are racist extremists. The fundamental issue here is that, and once again, we've lost our faithfulness, our spirit. We've lost our moral compass. The issue here is the value of human life. The fact that we have a common humanity, and we should understand and appreciate that, and appreciate each other. So I'm going to end it on there, I guess. Just our common humanity, people. We should always remember that, and hopefully somewhere down the line, we will get I'm hoping that we get a president one of these days who make reduction of our murder rate a top priority, and make us getting along as Americans a top priority, regardless of our diverse opinions and ways of looking at that and our self-righteousness. And I say that as a former corporate guy who I always appreciated the fact that we could bring people together from all walks of life, from all political persuasion, from all types of religion, all colors, all sexual preferences or whatever, we could come together and solve problems. The next issue is, I never thought I'd be talking about this subject, the shortage of baby formula. Now, gotta be honest, I knew when this administration came in that a lot of things would just go all to hell. I'm sorry. I don't know how better to put it. I expected for us some type of war or skirmish to break out where we would be sending troops and money over there. I expect for the economy to get worse. I expect for them to start letting open up the borders again to people to enter this country illegally. I expected gas prices to go up, everything to go up. I expect for just about everything bad you can think of, except running out of baby formula. And first of all, let's talk about how this happened, how this shortage happened. I can understand it as a result of COVID and the impact on the supply chain. I think I can see where that led to some shortages. Now, here's the thing. I believe that we handled the whole coronavirus thing wrong in the first place. Based upon my reading and understanding of immunology, based upon my knowledge of human history and plagues, based upon my knowledge of how this system works, I would suggest, and I'm willing to even debate Dr. Fauci on this one, I would suggest that our top priority should have been to protect the most vulnerable. And if we had to isolate them, if we had to give them this N95 mask, if they wanted to remain in their homes, I would be in favor of us offering them free delivery of DoorDash, Bite Squad, or whatever, so they can get food. I would even be in favor of offering them free cable television so they can have entertainment there if that's what they chose to do. Just protect the most vulnerable. But I would never, ever, ever restrict the freedom of other citizens who were not high risk. And by the way, I was always looking at the numbers and the statistics and the studies, and I always was suspicious of the fact that the main numbers they were giving us were number of cases. And based upon my early readings there, and I was reading studies by the USC and LA County, studies by Santa Clara, when they was telling us there was hundreds of thousands of cases, those studies was proving that there was millions of people in California who had already had the COVID virus and recovered because they was measuring antibodies. And I know that's scientific for some people. I was talking to OR doctors and doctors who were writing out death certificates and being pressured into putting COVID down as a cause. As a matter of fact, a personal friend of mine from Ohio, his cousin was shot and killed, shot 5 times and killed. And they put his cause of death down as COVID. And the family was just really upset, and they were going back and forth with the medical examiner about that. I don't know how it turned out, but I heard a lot of cases like that. And so we were talking about the impact of the pandemic. A lot of that impact shouldn't have happened in the first place. And I know, and I'm going to speak personally, we'll move on to some of the other reasons for this. For the first 2 weeks when the pandemic, coronavirus came, I tried to take some precaution, but during that whole 2 weeks, I'm researching in immunology, I'm researching history, I'm researching herd immunity and everything. After about the first 2 weeks, I'm like, okay, my plan is to get over it, and go on with my life. And that's exactly what happened. And personally, I was never concerned about dying of COVID. And I'm not saying that for anybody else to listen to me. I'm not a medical expert. I'm just saying, as a faithful Christian, my personal approach was, okay, bring it on, and I'll get over it. And that's exactly what happened. So that whole COVID response and government policy on that was whack, as we would say. But the other reason that there's a shortage, just people start stockpiling it, and you can't blame moms. They were stockpiling it like they were stockpiling bathroom tissue. And then there's the government rules and policies that restrict importing baby formulas. In fact, you probably have heard some of the rules and regulations had to do with how they label the formula. And, that's typical government bureaucracy. A lot of my friends who don't understand basic economics, when the economy started getting well, they're Democrats, they wanted to give the previous administration credit for it rather than Trump. But if you understand basic economics and government policy, you understand the connection between Trump coming in and saying, we're going to reduce government regulation. For every new regulation, we're going to get rid of 3, 4, 5 of them. And if you understand economics and the impact of government regulation, you understand why our economy, that was one reason our economy really started growing and we got such great numbers. And the point of it is though, it was those government regulations that was stopping a lot of formula from being imported to this country. And then finally, one of the formula companies that Abbott, that makes Similac and a couple of other baby formulas, I guess they found bacteria. Some of the babies drinking the formula had some type of bacterial infection, so they say. And I think I heard that maybe one even died. But because of that, they recall a lot of those formula, and that further put a strain on it. Now, I haven't had a chance to check this out, but I heard a day or two ago that they actually found out that the formula was not behind those bacterial cases in the infants. But even then, it's going to take, I think, 4 to 8 weeks after ramping up again for that formula to hit the market. And so that whole shortage of formula should have never happened. And the thing about it, our current president, whenever you take the attitude that I'm going to vote for anybody for this position except this person, and I'm willing to take, let's face it, President Biden has some challenges here, and we're not surprised that all hell is breaking loose under his administration and that we're having these supply chain problems. They knew about this problem a few months ago and never took anything to do, any steps to do anything about it. So right now, we have a lot of moms with babies, the most fundamental thing in our lives. They cannot find enough formula to take care of them. But true to the spirit of woke liberals, which our president heads up, they're legal immigrants has formula. And that's evidence that they have enough formula for them, but the people in our country do not. And once again, this is consistent with their whole immigration open border policies. And let me say this, once again, it's a constitutional thing. I cannot think of anything more fundamental to a nation than its own sovereignty. And I find it ironic that we're over in a country like Ukraine, which even before this war broke out, I had been reading and hearing that it is one of the most corrupt countries on earth. There's a lot of mob rule there. There's a lot of human trafficking there. There's a lot of child trafficking there. And somehow they're convincing the American people that it's worth our lives and our fortune to go over there and protect that country. At the same time, we're not protecting our own borders. That absolutely makes no sense to me. And where I'm going to this with this is, look, as far as I'm concerned, any president, I don't care what party he's from, who does not do all he can to protect the borders of this country, I think it's his constitutional responsibility to do so. I think he should be impeached. I'm saying, even if I agree with the president, that's one of your fundamental duties, is to protect this country. And once again, I remind you, President Lincoln said, we're not going to be destroyed by some outside army. We're going to commit suicide. And if you ask me, if you just open up the borders where anyone can come in, if you just, we don't know whether they got COVID or any other disease, measles, whatever. We don't have jobs that's for them. We don't have a place for them to go. But most importantly, we know that they're breaking the law. And for any president to not enforce the borders of this country, I think it's impeachable. And we should get him out of office. And so for this administration, this president, to not only commit the treasonous act of not protecting our borders, to then turn around and provide baby formula to the illegal immigrants, why good, law-abiding, hardworking American wives and moms and fathers cannot find it to feed our babies. To me, that's an unacceptable and unforgivable action. So let's hope sometime very soon that the baby formula starts flowing into the stores. We have enough to feed our children, and hopefully we Americans, at least the next election, will wake up and understand the importance of sovereignty, understand the importance of protecting our natural boundaries and our borders, and never consider voting for any president, any candidate from any party, no matter how much you like him, who will not do his constitutional duty and protect our borders. So our next topic here on the Lacy Johnson Podcast is the recent theft, I call it, of the preliminary briefings from the Supreme Court on an abortion case before it. I think it's the Mississippi abortion case, if I remember correctly. But the bottom line is that it all points to Roe v. Wade, and somewhere, someone within the Supreme Court has done something that I would never thought would have been done. They actually stole a briefing, leaked it out, and then, of course, that led to what we're seeing now, a whole lot of leftist protest and attempt to intimidate and I mean, let's face it, they're mean people. So, but before I dive into that, whenever I think of abortion, I think of President Reagan's quote on abortion, and he had a very unique, simple way of putting things. He once said, I notice that everyone who's against abortion have already been born. And I thought that was a beautiful way of putting it. Sonia, I think her name is Sonia Curry, the mom of Steph Curry, great NBA player that most of you know. She came out within the last week or so and said that she was actually in the abortion clinic getting ready to abort Steph Curry. And God intervened and told her not to. Now, this is going on while they're out there protesting Roe v. Wade. Once again, interesting about it, you didn't hear much about her story in the news media because it didn't fit the narrative that they wanted to get out. In fact, it was opposite of the narrative. It said, and she basically made the point that she almost aborted Steph Curry if she'd followed her mind. Now, my view on abortion, before we talk about other things, as a Christian, and a follower of the teachings of Jesus Christ, I don't see how anyone could be anyone who followed Jesus could be for abortion. I just don't understand. And now I know none of us are perfect, and there are times when we may make mistakes like that, but we should do so very hesitantly. So I don't understand how anyone can be for abortion. I'm totally against it. But once again, I do appreciate the fact that we do live in a democracy that is not a theocracy. And so I'm going to fight against it being a constitutional right. But if I lose that fight on this human level, I understand, to me, what we're really is in is a spiritual battle. There's a verse in the Bible that says, render unto Caesar that which is Caesar, and unto God that which is God. And this whole law, Supreme Court thing, to me, that's the world of Caesar. And yes, we should fight in that world for our values and what we believe. But ultimately, our struggle is not with flesh and blood. It's a spiritual struggle. And we should look at it first and foremost as a spiritual battle. And when I look at it that way, I think that as a Christian, it's my duty to focus on the hearts, souls, and minds of people. And that if within my circle of influence, do my job or do my responsibilities as a Christian, regardless of what the law says, our women want to have abortion. And I say this as a Black person who knows the history of abortion and Planned Parenthood and Margaret Sanger. I know that she was into eugenics. I know she was a big racist. I know that that's the foundation that Planned Parenthood is built on. And what hurts my heart is that, the Black culture basically is a conservative culture. And we're not, and we believe in Christianity and Jesus. And I don't know how we let any person, group, or political party talk us into supporting abortion. That's once again has flowed down from a racist founder of Planned Parenthood. And I think it's a statistical fact that most of the abortion clinics are in Black neighborhoods and poor neighborhoods. I've heard as many as 20 million Black babies have been aborted. And once again, I don't want to get too heavily in quoting the Bible, but we've just lost our spiritual foundation. And until we get that back, I think we would never achieve what God has in mind for us to achieve. 20 million Black babies, that's just way too much. Once again, and let's talk about it from a constitutional level. I talked in the earlier session that we as conservative believe in the Constitution, and I'll go even further, the strict construction of the Constitution. We believe that if there's something you want the Constitution to be, and if it's not currently in the Constitution, the framers develop a process to change it, to go out and convert people and convince people that we need an amendment in the Constitution that make abortion legal across the nation. But once again, believing in the Constitution, we respect states' rights. We respect the fact that the idea is limited federal government. We respect the idea that if something is not specifically defined in the Constitution, it's left to the states. And so I feel that way about abortion, and it's not even how I feel on the issue. I believe the Constitution should take precedent. In fact, in my life, I try to base everything I do and every opinion I have on any issue on principles. The first set of principles I find in the teachings of Jesus. The second set of principles I find in the Constitution. The third set of principles I try to base things on is what my mom and dad and my elders taught me as far as being ethical and moral and value and my values. And then the fourth thing I base it on is any principles that I may have developed over the years from just reading and getting wiser. And based on all those things, there's no right to abortion in the Constitution. Now, once again, since I respect the Constitution, I'm going to make a personal confession. And since I'm a Christian, I'm not for the death penalty. I'm against the death penalty. But I respect the fact that that's a state right and that the federal government should not create any type of national ruling. The Supreme Court, in a ruling they come talking about death penalty that is not constitutional from a national level, that that's a state right. And where am I going? What am I trying to say? So since I feel strongly about that issue, I have personally chosen not to live in states with the death penalty. To me, that's the way it's supposed to work. If you leave it, the issue of abortion to states, which I think that's the way where it should be, and make it a state right. And if you feel so strongly that abortion is a right of women, then move to states where abortions are legal. I think that's the way it should work, rather than trying to make every state fit your way of looking at things. And look, and maybe I'm a little taking it too far, but one of the things that, and I want to quote him here, my body, my decision. And the whole abortion issue is being portrayed as, on one level, as I'm a woman. I have the right to do what I want with my body. I have a right to privacy. Now, to me, logically, I would ask, so since it's your body, your decision, since you think that because of that, then the right to privacy gives you the right to abort, then what's stopping you from thinking that I have a right to be a prostitute? It's my body. I can do what I want with it. For those who use that logic to say that therefore women have a right to abortion, and I can admit that I'm missing something. Why does that logically not extend to I have a right to prostitute myself? And so I want us to think about that and the logic of that. But in the final analysis, we have to respect the Constitution, I think. Well, I shouldn't have to, because I've just seen so many things where the Constitution is being thrown out the window. And regretfully, a lot of it started right after 9/11. And a lot of it has continued through this pandemic where, and people who have power and money, they know this, what they use to get away from the fundamentals of the Constitution is fear. They've long figured out if you want something from people that's really not constitutional, if you just scare the heck out of them enough, they'll let you get away with it. And you combine that with the fact that most Americans are not even familiar with the Constitution. They don't know their rights. We've taken civics and history out of the classroom, and I don't think it's coincidental. And therefore, they just sit back and let the government usurp them and their personal freedom. And then again, the other part of that, and I mentioned that, I reiterate, liberals really don't seem to care much about what the Constitution says or does if it gets in the way of what they want. And that's another danger. So that's where I am on that whole abortion issue. The fact that these protesters are allowed to go out to these Supreme Court justices' houses and march and protest and yell, disrespect them in their homes, disrespect their families, their children, and basically serve as a threat and try to intimidate that. And the current administration not only sits back and let it happen, they give tacit approval to that. American people, I don't care where you stand on issues. We're better than that. We are better than going out and protesting Supreme Court justices' house. We're better than leaking and basically avoiding basic principles of how we should act and protect our Supreme Court and to get our way. So I hope you think about that. But the bottom line, too, is I won't be surprised if it doesn't backfire on them. I won't be surprised if it doesn't become one of those other issues like defund the police, where they assume because they're in an environment where everybody think like them, where they're in an environment where all their information they get is the woke leftist stuff, that the rest of the country feel that way. I think they may be in a kind of surprise when the election come around and they find out that they have turned off more people than support that they hope to gain. So I hope that's the result, so we can start having better behavior. We can start respecting each other and respecting the fact that other people have different opinion than us. And I guess finally respecting the Constitution and restoring some respect to our institutions like the Supreme Court. Today, I am very proud and happy to have as our first guest, Mr. Andrew Klavan, best-selling and award-winning mystery and thriller novelist. I think that's the way he perhaps referred to himself. He has a new book out that we're talking about here pretty soon, Truth and Beauty. And we're going to get started right now. Good morning, Mr. Klavan. How you doing?
I'm good. It's good to see you.
Okay, good to see you. By the way, before we get started, where are you at this morning? Where are you located? Are you in New York City?
I'm in Virginia. I'm right near Washington, D.C.
Oh, near Washington, D.C. Oh, you're near the swamp out there. Where?
At the edge of the swamp. Out there.
I spent some time out in Washington, D.C. working for a defense contractor. Enjoyed it. It was a beautiful area. And we're going to talk about this because we have a lot in common, believe it or not. One of them is the major in English, and we'll talk about some of those experiences. And we were liberals at one time, and my time out in Washington, D.C. area, really it's Springfield County, Springfield, Virginia. I was a liberal at that time, and I had a different perspective on Washington, D.C. Just thought it was a beautiful area. You could see the symbols of wealth. And as a liberal, I didn't have an issue with it. I felt good about it. By the time I went back there the last time, I had, gotten over my liberal ways. And I was a little bit more, I was conservative, and I was for small government. And I was looking at all these trappings of wealth. And I realized that it was our taxpayers' dollars paying for all of this. And by this time, I had also learned that the 6 richest counties in the country are in Washington, D.C., where they don't make anything, they don't invent anything. And how in the heck they become the richest have some of the richest 6 counties in the nation out there? Well, simply because all the trappings of government, the waste of government, the overspending of government. And I just had a totally different perspective on it at that time. But anyway, that's enough about me. Why don't you tell me about yourself, Andrew, and your early life, where you're from, and your journey to being an author, and more importantly, your journey to being a conservative, abandoning the liberal way of life and the liberal point of view, and also you're transitioning to the world of Christianity. So give us a little bit of all of that? I know that's a compound question there.
There's a lot of stuff, yeah.
but I think you're a professional. I knew you could handle it. So just give us a little background on yourself, sir.
Well, I spent most of my life, as you said, as a mystery thriller author. I still am. I still publish crime stories. And I worked in Hollywood. My books were made into movies. And so I moved to Hollywood. I had been living overseas for 7 years. I lived in England for 7 years. And I didn't really know that I was becoming a conservative while I was in England, because I wasn't really paying attention to American politics. I was paying attention to British politics in as much as I was paying attention to any politics. But what I had seen just before I left was I had seen the Berlin Wall fall down. Mm-hmm. And, Ronald Reagan had been president, and just like Donald Trump later on, he was derided as a fool, as a warmonger, as a guy who was going to get us all blown to kingdom come. He was a stupid actor. He didn't know what he was supposed to be doing. He was just making stuff up. And then every single thing that Reagan said was going to happen happened. Everything he did improved the economy. His fight to win the Cold War, which literally no one thought could be done, including his own Secretary of State, was actually successful. And I remember when I watched the Berlin Wall come down, I remember thinking that old coot was right about everything. And so I left the country at that point, because that was the first upsurge of political correctness. And I went and I lived in London because I just couldn't stand the political correctness anymore. And while I was there, I didn't realize I was changing politically, but when I came back, I suddenly found that this horrible man I had heard about, Rush Limbaugh, was actually talking perfect sense. And that when I looked to find people who thought like I did, I found them on conservative websites like the National Review. And I thought, something has happened to me. I've changed. And shortly after my return, 9/11 happened. And I remember sitting, watching TV about 2-3 days after the killings, the murders of 3,000 people. And I remember David Letterman, who was doing the late night comedy show at the time, he came out and he said, I have to think about this to figure out why they hate us. And I thought, what do you mean, why do they hate us? They're Nazis. Why shouldn't they? They're supposed to hate us. These are exactly the people who are supposed to hate you, And I realized that in my absence and 7 years away from the country, the culture had gone completely astray. That a culture where a major, star like David Letterman could get up and wonder why these wicked, evil, mean, small-minded people hated us, the freest people on the face of the earth, most tolerant people, the least racist human beings who had ever existed on the planet. Why they should hate us. I mean, it seemed obvious to me why they should hate us. And so that was when I began to speak out and to sort of talk about the way the culture had shifted, the way the culture always depicted America as the bad guys, the way the culture always depicted our religion as bad, our history as bad, everything about us is bad. And having lived overseas, I mean, one of the things that nobody knows if you live only in America and you never leave America is, of course, America has racism and prejudice like every place. It's full of human beings with bent human hearts like all of us. But man, oh man, it is so much better than every single other place on earth, And so I started to talk to mostly conservatives about changing the culture. And two things happened when I did this in public. One is I was having a thriving career in Hollywood. I was selling multiple screenplays every year, which is a very good living. And suddenly that stopped. I mean, it just turned off like that. And the other was I noticed the conservatives had no idea what I was talking about. When I would say, you lost the country at the movies, you have to worry more about the movies, at least as much about the movies as you do about a congressional race in Ohio. Those two things are important, but they're both important. And conservatives looked at me like I was out of my mind. And this is 20 years ago, so it has really changed since then. We have realized, as Andrew Breitbart liked to say, that politics is downstream from culture, and things have really changed in that regard. But I used to make speeches. I swear, I used to come home and tell my wife that they looked at me the way she looked at me when I said that if you buy something on sale, it still costs money. She would look at me like, I'm sorry, you're a lovely guy, but I don't know what you're talking about, And that's the way conservatives looked at me. And so I realized I had become almost by accident an outspoken conservative. And I think what did it more than anything was Hollywood, where I worked, making movies about American soldiers as rapists and killers and bad guys, while our soldiers were being shot at in Iraq and Afghanistan. And so it's one thing when they made movies against Vietnam, the Vietnam War was already over. And a lot of those people who made those movies had been in the war. They didn't like it. They had the right to speak their opinion. I felt these people in Hollywood who had never been anywhere except for Hollywood had also had the right to speak their opinion, but not the right to make movies of propaganda for the enemy while our guys were being shot at. You know, I thought that was wrong. And so that just made me speak out. And like I said, it ended my Hollywood career. And it moved me into this new, utterly new career of talking, which is I'm now on the Daily Wire. I now have a podcast on the Daily Wire with Ben Shapiro, and we started that together, and it's been a wonderful success. So it really has been a big change because writers live most of their lives alone in a room, and now I'm out in the public all the time. It's really been a major, major change, and all of that happened at the same time I was moving toward Christianity, but they actually weren't connected. Those were two different things. That was a personal journey that had been going on for 35 to 40 years. I was baptized when I was 49 years old. And I had started out as Jewish, but not really a believing Jew, a secular Jew, a guy who was kind of, I was an artist. I lived in LA. I lived in New York. I lived in London. I lived with sophisticated people who thought if you were a Christian, you were probably crazy and stupid. And so it was like a big shock to me to find out that I was crazy and stupid, and I did believe that in Jesus Christ, and so that was quite another journey. Almost a whole show in itself talking about that.
Well, once again, I'm finding out that we have a lot in common, and so I'm going to unpack a few things you said briefly. I too used to visit England and London. And the first thing that struck me, one of the first things that struck me was the attitude of the people who felt like the government owed them something. And I said to myself then, I would never buy anything from England. the attitude of the workers. You talked about President Reagan. Like you, I was a liberal at the time, and Reagan might have been a chance because the way the media portrayed him, I was like some of the crazy liberals now, but I was like, you know what, I might have to leave this country if he get elected. Of course, I was a hypocrite there too, and I didn't mean it. And then you mentioned Rush Limbaugh, and we both know that the media and everyone has figured out, the other side has figured out, if you discredit the person, if you discredit the source, the people would discredit, who believe in that, would discredit everything that he says or she says. And so I saw them doing that to Reagan. I remember the media portraying him sleeping in cabinet meetings and things like that. Now, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit because I'm like you. I saw the same thing that they're doing to Trump now. And so as a result of that, as I got older and wiser, I began to go back and take a look at that whole Ronald Reagan era. I'm looking at interviews that he gave, and I'm finally realizing how much propaganda they used against him to paint him in a certain light. And so that's another thing. And then Rush Limbaugh, once again, they figured that if they discredit him, they would scare me away from listening to him. But, thank God I've been blessed with a certain curiosity and a certain personality where I want to hear both sides. And I think even more important than that, I've never disliked anybody in my life. So a lot of times people don't listen to someone because they dislike them. But fast forwarding a little bit, so I'm like, they keep telling me not to listen to Rush Limbaugh. Let me see why they're doing that. And my very first time I listened to him, the first thing that struck me was the music that he played. It was all like old R&B, oldest but good. And I'm like, hey, they say this guy's a racist. Why he's playing all this old good soul music here? And then I started listening to him. And, I'm the type that I'll pause because I started listening to him on YouTube at night. And I pause whenever he said anything, and I'll go research it. And here's the thing. Everything I researched, it was exactly what he said. And I started verifying the truth of what he was saying. And just fast forward, over the course of time, it happened day after day after day, and I finally realized that they was basically portrayed this guy as a negative person. It's the kind of training people to be self-censors, and I began to understand the truth of what he was saying, and that was towards the end of my journey to conservatism. So I like that. And then the other thing you said, and we'll get back here to some of the things you did, is just the when you were in Hollywood, you understood the importance of media. And at that time, your conservative friends perhaps did not. And at that time, I had studied propaganda and learned how all that stuff worked and how they use it. And then I had begun to understand the importance of media and how it's used to formulate people's opinion for propaganda, which I guess now they call it public relations. So I had some very similar experiences as you did. And maybe that's why both of us are sitting here today as English majors, former liberals, and believer in Jesus Christ. So I really appreciate all that and the stuff we have in common. I should say once again, I think you were born in 1954, the same year that I was born. And once again, you sound like you're like me. You connect dots. One of the dots I connected with President Trump. You, like me, was born in 54. You were born during the Korean War. And I thought when President Trump left office, it struck me that every president since I was born took us to war, sent soldiers over to die and fight for other people, sent money over there, except one, and that was Donald Trump. And then you start connecting that, you start remembering Eisenhower warning us about the military-industrial complex, and we could go on forever, but we start connecting those dots, and that's why we're here today where we are. So let me ask a few other things about your writing. You have a book out right now. I think it's called Truth and Beauty. Tell us a little bit about that book and what made you write it.
Well, it's actually kind of a remarkable thing. You know, it started a conversation I was having with my son where I was talking about how difficult some of the words of Jesus are to understand, that we quote them by rote because they're so familiar to us. But sometimes when you listen to them, you think, well, wait, do I really believe that? Do I really believe that's what I should do? And my son said to me, you know, you're trying to understand a philosophy, but really what you should do is try to get to know the man. Oh, yeah. And I thought, gee, that's a brilliant idea, because when you know somebody, you know, when you really know somebody, like my wife, I've been married for 42 years and I know her well, but I couldn't tell you what her philosophy of life is. I'm not even sure she has a philosophy of life. What I can do is I can say, oh, she would like that, or she would dislike that, or that, you know, she would enjoy, that would make her laugh. You get to know somebody, you kind of have them inside you in a way. And so I reread the Gospels. I actually taught myself Greek, not very well, but enough so I could read a few lines of the Gospels every day, just trying to get to know him, you know, just forgetting all the philosophy, forgetting all the theology, everything that any church had said, even what Paul said. I just left it all aside. I thought, who is this guy, you know? And as I tried to understand his words in that light, this strange thing happened is the words of famous poets started to come back to me. Guys like William Wordsworth and John Keats and Samuel Coleridge, they suddenly seemed to me to echo the words of Jesus. And I thought, well, that's really strange. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized why. And the reason is those poets lived at a time that's very much like ours, a time when a lot of the old beliefs had fallen away. The French Revolution had happened, and they thought, now we're going to have paradise. Politics is going to give us paradise. They were literally murdering priests, trying to chase religion out of the public square. People were saying that marriage was a bad idea and that men and women really should be exactly the same. All the things that are happening now were happening then. And these poets had to sort of reinvent the world. They had to sort of say, you know, now we're in a world of science where before we were in a world of superstition, which is also true of us. You know, how do we believe in things again? How do we know what's right? How do we know what's real? And so that's what they started to explore. And the great ones actually found a way. And so they were saying things that Jesus had said in a new language, in a very beautiful language. And that's the reason I called it. One of these poets wrote a poem that says, beauty is truth and truth is beauty. But it really is about the truth, namely Jesus Christ, and the beauty with which these poets kind of reinvented the Christian world. And so I thought, this is such a crazy idea that I'm never going to be able to sell this book, but I have to write it. And so I wrote it without telling anybody about it. And it was a remarkable experience because the minute I did it, I realized somehow that I was doing exactly what God wanted me to do, which is not something that happens all that often. During the period I was writing it, I couldn't even pray in words because everything was exactly right. And so I would just like commune with God, but I didn't have anything to say, you know. And I finished the book and I thought, well, no one's ever going to publish this book. It's too nutty. You know, it's such a far out idea. Nobody is even going to understand what I'm talking about. But I knew one editor who was a very, very brilliant man named Webster Jounson. He worked for a Christian publisher. And I thought, well, I'll send it to him because if anybody would publish it, it'll be him. And he bought it on the spot and basically said to me, you know, I don't know how many copies of this we can sell. We brought out the book and it was a bestseller. It was on the USA Today bestseller list. Not only that, people's reaction to it has been shocking to me, which has been tremendously emotional. You can go on Amazon and see it's got over 300 5-star reviews. People saying, you know, yes, this is what I was trying to understand. I couldn't see it before. And it's really changed me a lot. It has changed the way I read the Gospels. It has made it a much more personal thing, a much more illuminated thing. I go to church and they read the Gospels and I think, yes, now I see that. I see who is saying that to me and why he is saying that to me. And so it has been a remarkable experience. And I have to say the people who are reading it every day on Twitter and on my emails and everything, I'm just getting these notes from people who say, yes, this has really changed me. And some, a large number who are saying, I couldn't believe before, which always moves me more than anything. I couldn't believe before. And now suddenly I realize I have to believe. And so it's been just a remarkable God-touched experience from beginning to end. And again, all my expectations, I had no expectations for the book. And instead, it's been one of the most successful things I've ever done. And it's just been a wonderful, wonderful experience.
Well, we really, really enjoyed that input. Just a couple of follow-up on a few things. We do have a lot in common. You're talking about the spirit of Jesus rather than all the details. And once again, that's one of the reasons I'm against things like abortion and the death penalty, because it just doesn't fit me in the spirit of Jesus. You talked about Wordsworth and Keats, and I was in pre-med for my first couple of years in college and ended up majoring in English. And my oldest son's name comes from the sonnet on First Looking into Chapman's Homer by Keats, where it says, silent upon a peak in Darien. And that's the name of my oldest son. And I read that sonnet in the 9th grade and never forgot. But I went on to, believe it or not, a career in computer engineering. But I really, really, really enjoy all the things that you've shared with me and my audience. I'm just sorry that I don't have more time, so I'm going to talk to my staff and see can we get you on again, because I just love everything that you're saying. Like I say, we have a lot of stuff in common. So I'm going to talk to them about booking you again. And I really, really thank you for being on the very first episode of the Lacy Johnson Podcast, being the first guest. And we're going to make history here. So thank you very much, Mr. Klavan, and I wish you the best. And if I'm ever in New York or out in D.C. again, I'll look you up, and hopefully we can go out and grab some lunch and have more time to talk.
Thanks very much. It's a real pleasure talking to you. I appreciate it.
Same here. Thank you very much.
All right.
Bye-bye.